Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Staying Sweet, the podcast. I've got a very amazing guest today. It's Katie Mac from the podcast Single Sounds. Please introduce yourself. Tell me a bit more about you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, as you said, I have my podcast called Single Sounds, which is where I interview singles and then the guests can write in if they want to date my guests. No, sorry. Did I say that right?
Yeah, date your guests. I think it's such a clever concept, and I've been on the podcast, guys. I loved it. I really enjoyed the format.
You had a really good episode.
Yeah, it was really fun, actually. And I think getting yourself out of your comfort zone and doing something like that is, you know, such an incredible thing. Firstly, to create something like that and create a safe space for dating, but also try something a bit different, because I feel like there's a lot of people that have not exhausted all routes, but are kind of open to trying something different.
Yeah, I agree. I get that a lot where people say, oh, you know, actually it'd be really nice for someone to hear my voice, hear my personality, rather than just judging me on a few photos. And I can tell my stories instead of writing like 3 words on a prompt. Like, it is much nicer.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Tell me a bit about how the podcast kind of idea came about, because I've not seen anything like it before. It's very niche.
It is quite random.
Just so cool and such a clever concept. Like, how did you first initially start? Was it easy to get people on the podcast as a startup?
Yeah, it actually was, mainly because I have a lot of single friends. So initially it was just my friends, but the idea came from how I met my ex. So I met him in lockdown and we had to virtually date for like a month and a half. And I wasn't nervous for that first date because I knew him so well. And there's lots of advice now that's saying like you should have phone calls before you meet these strangers on apps. But previously, like, I think I was probably too nervous to ask for that. Sometimes I get a voice note if I was like cheeky with it. But other than that, I didn't really hear their voice that much. And I'd go on these awful dates from apps and I just wouldn't like their mannerism, maybe their humor, or sometimes just generally their voice is a bit off-putting. And with my ex, I had to literally just call him for a month and a half consistently. So when we did go on that first date, I wasn't nervous. I knew exactly kind of what I was getting myself into, even though I didn't really know what he looked like. I'd obviously seen photos and like we'd been on FaceTime, but it's not the same as like being physically in someone's presence, I don't think.
Definitely.
You don't know if you're going to find them like as attractive, but luckily I did. And I do think though, like, that emotional connection we'd built up was the reason why it was like the most successful relationship I've had to date. So I was like, okay, how can I short form this and get other people involved? And that's why I thought, why not a podcast?
Such a good idea. And to get those people initially on the podcast, like, who did you reach for? Did you think I wanted this to be sort of for entertainment purposes? So I feel like with TV shows nowadays, like Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, they're kind of not really going for people who are looking for love, but are looking for something else. And sort of as you've navigated and grown your podcast, has there ever been a moment of that? Are people kind of using it as like a career springboard or like a pivot, or you're still in that kind of point where it's very organic?
Yeah, exactly, because it's anonymous, so you can't be using it as
there you
like,
go, guys,
a leverage. Yeah.
No leverage is here.
You can't become Instagram famous from it. So yeah, that was my whole idea. I wanted like very normal people to be on it. The reason I made it anonymous initially was because I had a regular job and I knew that I wouldn't want my name on something like that, where maybe I'm telling my worst dating story and I wouldn't want my employer to find it, or maybe a future employer. You know, I know they do deep dives now on the internet.
Oh, they do.
So that was the main reason why it was anonymous initially. But I've kept it that way because I think it is good, and it also means that people then just don't go look them up on Instagram, because then it's just another form of app basically.
Definitely.
If the name was there, you could just look them up, so it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So you find out who they are once you write in, so you do get the name eventually, but you've got to like make that first step.
That I really like, because I think a lot of people can judge a book by its cover. I've dated a guy that I met in person and he actually said to me, I wouldn't have even spoken to you if I'd seen your Instagram. And I don't really know why that was, but it was interesting that he'd mentioned that. And not that I really care, to be honest, but I find things like that really interesting, that someone can go to that level of like digging up on someone and not give them the opportunity to get to know them. Or I feel like we've got so much information at our fingertips, you know, from finding out the person's last ex. I feel like you could literally deep dive into anything. What would you say to someone that is quite good at being an FBI agent.
Yeah,
and
stop.
Stop,
because it's more about your mindset. So if you're going into a date and you're like trying to pick holes, like you're trying to catch them out, you know they went to Ibiza in 2008 and you're asking them about their future holidays or past holidays, and they've said, oh, I've never been to Ibiza. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they might be protecting themselves.
They might have
from
just
something.
forgot.
Yeah, literally forgotten.
Or just like, yeah, maybe they're a bit embarrassed that they went when they were 16. Like, I don't know. But I think so much of it, if you're like trying to investigate so hard, like you said, FBI someone, I think your mindset on the date is almost trying to catch them out, and that it's just not going to lead to any like romantic feelings. I don't think, even like a likable feeling.
Definitely.
You're not going to fall in love or fall in like, as I like to say.
That's a very, very interesting point. And I feel like with dating these days, and particularly if you're someone listening to the podcast today, which there are a lot of women. At one point I actually had 100% female audience.
Wow.
But it's just teetered under that, so we're like 90 something percent, which is still crazy. But there are, people listening to this podcast today, high achievers, people who want to be successful in business, have a startup, or are kind of navigating their career journeys and are trying to date, and potentially they're having to showcase themselves in a certain way in order to present themselves in a certain way, and people might be finding those profiles. How can we balance being that sort of hustler on one side of the fence, but also being someone who kind of sits in their feminine a bit more, or is more open to kind of the natural forms of dating? Because I feel like dating now is very like, okay, what can that person give me? What can I get out of that relationship?
Yeah.
Or like
Bit transactional.
And I feel like when you've got so much information at your fingertips, it's like I don't really think they'll give me what I need, versus how will that emotional connection develop? How can you kind of differentiate between the two and find those good eggs in amongst the others?
No, it's really hard. I think in terms of sitting in your feminine, there's things you can like look for in a person. Like, are they empathetic? Are they listening to you? Are they asking you questions? Like, I think that's really important. I've been on dates where they just chatted completely about themselves, and I'm sure they're just sat in there, like aggressive doing masculine energy of like, this is me, I want to show you who I am, and I don't actually care like who you are.
Exactly.
But I think if you're trying to dig into like your own feminine, I think there's really good things you can do, like thought journaling, being in nature, meditating, all those things. If you know that you sit quite high and you're masculine and you're like, I want to do this, I know exactly what I want, which isn't a bad thing, obviously, but I think you can help yourself by trying to rebalance and be like, okay, how do I feel about this and that person?
Definitely. And I think there's also this element that when you have a business or you're navigating your career, you're doing it very independently, and it's like, where would a relationship come into play alongside that? Would you say that, and I don't like to use it because unfortunately I've had it before, with sort of guys saying the word intimidating. I don't like to use it because I don't believe in being
around.
I feel like it gets thrown around unnecessarily, when actually it's just someone that's trying to do better and better themselves.
Yeah.
How can you be someone that is less intimidating? I don't even like to say it, but I feel like it's something that we do have to discuss, because it comes up a lot, and I have women sort of speak to me and say, you know what, I always come across a bit too much, or I feel like I'm too much. How can you navigate that?
Yeah, well, my advice would be, don't water yourself down. I think the right person wouldn't find you too much, and I don't think anyone is too much for someone. Like, yeah, okay, you might be too much for that insecure person, but
there you go, she said it, she spilled the tea.
Yeah, I just say, well, I would never tell anyone to water themselves down or change like what they're looking for. I think if you know, and like, it's tough, but especially if you have a narrow like what you're looking for, it's going to be harder to find that person. And you can probably, I do it, like I think about other people and the partners that they've chosen, and I don't get sad that I'm not in that relationship, because it's not someone I would choose.
Yeah.
And I think that's really reassuring to be like, actually, you know what, like that's not my person. I'm really happy for them that they found that, but I'm still looking, and that's still, you know, a journey that I'm on. And I am really hopeful. Like, I do think that there's someone for everyone. And you asked earlier if the podcast, like, if I thought of it as like an entertainment thing, but the episodes have so much more humor and personality in them than I expected. Like, everyone brings so much energy to their episodes, and I think that's what really gives me hope. It's like, actually everyone's out here just looking for that person. And like, people, I don't think like genuine people are out here to play games. Like, I think they all just want that person. And I think as humans, we're terrible at communicating when that person's wrong. And I think that's where we get all the ghosting and the caspering and the cloaking or whatever words you want.
Caspering, I love it.
Yeah, have you heard of caspering?
No, but it's ghosting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically like a friendlier version. So when they like fade you out instead of like full on ghost.
I think I might have done that before.
I think most people do that.
Oops, sorry if you are someone who I've done that too.
It's because we don't know how to handle these situations though, because most people you date, they're not going to be your person.
Yeah, or they kind of keep you as an option.
Yeah.
Which that is equally as toxic, because it doesn't allow you to be open to other dates and other people, because in the back of your mind you're kind of comparing yourself maybe to someone else. How can someone listening to this podcast develop that criteria? Not that everything needs to be a checklist and a you know, a whole list of things.
Too many lists.
You can't have too many lists.
We can
list
have important
enough,
things
but
on
like,
the list.
what are the key things that someone should probably consider to have as like main things that maybe you've seen with guests on the podcast that you're like, that's a really good quality?
Yeah, I mean, so many people do repeat the same ones of like, you know, fun, outgoing, but I do love like someone who respects me, someone who cares for me, like those kind of words, like someone who's genuine, honest. Like, I think those are the things that you can be picky about. Don't be picky about if they're over 5'10". Like, great, you know, like we all have our like ideal height criteria, but that isn't something that you should, you know, like actually draw a boundary on, I don't think. Like, or their hair color or whatever, you know, something arbitrary. But like, yeah, draw the boundary on like, are they honest? Do they like lie? Are they manipulative? Like, those are the things I think you can be like really strong on, and don't let someone, you know, water you down on that boundary and say like, oh, it's fine because they fit every other box. But then like, if they're doing white lies, you know, like, it's just
that's not as great.
Yeah.
Not at all. You mentioned the word caring, and I feel like that's a really broad kind of terminology for a relationship, because that could come under anything.
Yeah.
Sort of relating to love languages and things like that. What would you say someone could do to be more caring with a woman in business? Or like, what kind of things would you consider to be thoughtful and caring, like you say?
Well, respecting schedule, number one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
That's a good one. And I think a really good way to do that is having a shared calendar. Like, if you know what someone's going through, like on their day, you can be really thoughtful about it. You know, you've seen they've got back-to-back meetings. Maybe they woke up at 6 for a gym class, whatever it is, and they're getting home. You can see, oh my goodness, they've had the busiest day. You're not gonna then say to them, why didn't you take out the bins today?
Yeah.
Or do you know what I mean? Like, just being thoughtful about what have they got on this week, this month, this day, and just like picking your battles when maybe like, you know, they're not going to respond well. I think that's really caring, just to like, for a busy person who's got a hectic schedule, like maybe just be aware.
Amazing. And why do you think that, like, what do you contribute maybe to like the key things as to why high achieving women might find it harder to date or kind of stick out a relationship? Are there any like bits that you've sort of noticed in being in the dating realm, podcast hosting, like with all these different things that you're kind of getting yourself into, and you must be networking with people that are high achieving, both masculine and feminine. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, it is tough, and I've had similar to you, like a lot of people say to me, like, especially when they're in the like a comedy role or a podcasting space, like
comedy's an interesting one.
Yeah, especially for a lot of women, like they are intimidating because typically a man wants to be the funny one and they're not that comfortable with the woman being the funny one.
Yeah. Do you know what that reminds me of? Angus Thong's quote: "Boys don't like girls for funniness."
Yeah, this is so true.
Boys don't like girls for funniness. Like, I always plays in my head, but it's like, no, okay, you can be funny.
But I do think it's more than that. I think it's because you have a presence and
Yeah.
you know what you're saying and you're not afraid to speak your mind. And I think that does terrify not just men, people. Like, people are more nervous around people that will speak their own mind because they know they're going to get called out or they're going to say something that, you know, if they're upset.
So I'm going to ask you a very direct question.
Okay.
Where can my high achieving women out there find their dream person?
Yes. I wrote a list for this one.
Thank you for the list.
Because I was thinking about all the places and all the things that you could do. And I was like, there was too many. So I was like, actually, that's really positive. And I hope people take that away, being like, all of these might not be for you, but like maybe you can do one of them. So my number one, and I wrote this at the top because it is my number one, and I think it works really well and it's worked well for people I know, is go to your friends' work drinks. So they're not your colleagues.
That is genius.
Yeah, genius.
So there's no like...
So it's not weird.
Conflict of interest.
Exactly. Shit where you eat. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on
No,
this.
we can swear away. I've got a lovely analogy in my head now. Nice visual. Yeah, I've heard that analogy before.
It's exactly. Everyone will tell you not to date your colleagues, right?
Yes.
Which is actually really interesting because it's those relationships are 25% more likely to work than normal relationships. So actually, I would also say your own office. I'm quite an advocate for that.
I work in my childhood bedroom. So.
Yeah, it's not.
This is why I come to WeWork sort of spaces.
But yeah, exactly.
But this is another thing, and not to go on a tangent, but I do think it's really hard for people who work from home these days.
100%.
Getting yourself
this is
out
why I go
to
to
these
other people's work
drinks. That is genius. If you're somebody who is self-employed or a startup, or
but most of your friends will have office jobs probably
100%.
And go for drinks on a Thursday with nice, attractive, high-value men.
And they'll be in suits.
Yeah,
or
and
like
also
smart
they're
outfits.
like normally willing to meet new people because they've spoken to their colleagues all day. Like, they're not that bothered. But a new person coming along that's, you know, high energy, is there for the right reasons.
Yeah. My cogs are turning. You've lit something up in me.
Yeah.
It's like a eureka. I've not I've even not done that. Like, why haven't I
It's
done
really
that?
simple. But yeah, I do it all the time. Because also you just never know who you're going to meet. Like, generally, it's a great networking space. But I do think for dating, it's a really good one. I went to one recently and I saw this most attractive man and I was like, absolutely. Got his Instagram.
That's
easy,
lovely.
job
And do you
done.
know what as well? You're kind of in that mindset of like that you've just come out of the hustle and you've just come out of work and it's like a release and a de-stress, but actually it's quite an accessible like topic of conversation. You can talk about who you work, like how you work with that person, your friend, the mutual friend aspect.
And you've got someone there that you're comfortable with that you can always retreat back to. They can always introduce you to more people as well.
Go around the office, hun. Why not?
Yeah, you're not exactly.
Make it work for yourself.
But they can't awkwardly Teams you the next day because you're not part of the company. So it's just perfect.
It's genius. I love that. I mean, that is definitely a number one.
Yeah, it's number one for me, like 1,000,000%. The next one for me is going to kind of exclusive members events, clubs. I think that's a really good one if you can get an invite. That's why I was like, it's not for everyone because, you know, you might not be able to get an invite.
Yeah, look, everyone has Soho House memberships these days. Just befriend enough people that you're on rotation.
I've got one, so come along.
There you go.
And I know people that are in the Ned as well.
Yeah, the Ned. That I quite like.
And they have, if you're straight woman, they have a much higher percentage of men at that one. So
do they?
Yeah.
Okay, so for all my...
A lot of finance bros, but depends what you're into.
I mean, you can navigate that. You can have a few dates.
A lot of mask energy around, but I'm not complaining.
Neither am I. Continue. I don't want to distract you from this list. It's great.
Well, you're going to ask about Soho House.
I was going to say, is it a good place to meet people? Like, what have you found from the experience? Because I've done a couple of the different venues.
Yeah.
But sort of in terms of finding people or kind of networking in that way, do you think it's a good place? Have you noticed it be a positive experience?
I find like when I go to work there, no. Like people don't.
I feel like people don't work there.
They do. It's actually very popular. I do.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to be a member mainly, so I can use it as like my version of WeWork.
The one at White City, I tried to have a meeting there with someone that I knew, and like we needed to do a call, and you can only
you're
do
not allowed
phone
to
calls in the
call.
stairs.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh, it's
No,
a bit
and that's why
stressful.
it's not very good for social. When I do work there, it's normally when I'm like editing.
Yeah.
So I've got headphones on,
Headphones
and
on.
everyone's kind of doing the same. Like no one's taking calls. You're not allowed. So
Yeah.
it's quite like solo. But when I go to the actual like organized events,
Right.
they're really good for meeting people.
Nice.
And they do some dating specific ones, like not singles, but that's what I'm hoping to organize. So if anyone's a So House member,
yes,
coming soon.
If anyone, that is a really good idea.
And you can come as my guest.
Okay.
Yeah,
See,
really...
look, she's looking out for her fellow podcast community.
The events team are really keen to do that because there's a lot of single people at these, like in these members clubs,
and the creatives as well. People
that
are kind of not doing the same thing, but are like-minded and have are pursuing something and have that career drive. That's really cool.
So I think that's a good one.
You've got some really good ones. I didn't ever think that they wouldn't be good, but I'm inspired. I'm like, I haven't done these things.
I genuinely like them. That's why I was like, I need to keep like a list, because I was like, I need to remind myself when I'm like feeling a bit low on the dating, like what I can do.
Yeah, what you can do.
Another one I've not done, but like I do know it's very popular, is alumni events.
Okay.
From like either your uni or I don't know what else it'd be, like a work.
Yeah.
A work alumni maybe.
Yeah.
We could revisit your work, old job, but yeah, that stems from, I think, which we probably might go into a bit later, but the whole dating economics thing, about how there's a lot more women graduating university than there is men. And I think one of the author, John, of that book suggests a lot about revisiting people that you already know, or people from your past that maybe you dismissed when you were 21 because you just, didn't think that they were.
Yeah. Sorry, my cogs are turning now. Yeah. Yeah. What was the name of the book, sorry?
Datanomics is his first one. Then his second one is Make Your Move.
Okay.
Which is kind of like a solution.
Why is that giving me the Harry Potter song? When I make my move.
Oh yeah.
This podcast is so
Ron
off
Weasley.
the rails so quickly. That's cool.
But yeah, so that's the solutions book to the dating dilemma, which is really good read.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was good that he brought that out as a second one, to be like, okay, we know that the odds are shit, so what can we do?
Yeah.
And a big one for him is like going back and thinking, okay, is there anyone in my life that I already know, or someone maybe from my past that I dismissed that I could like revisit? And I think that's maybe where the alumni events could come into play. Like maybe there's someone from your course you didn't even like think about, didn't even know. Yeah. And then you see them and you're like, actually
you've developed.
Yeah.
But I feel like you grow and you change, and sometimes those meet cutes happen because you already know each other.
Yeah, and I think when you're like 20, 21 at uni, you're not thinking about really the important characteristics of a partner. No. I definitely wasn't.
No,
I was thinking,
it's kind of like,
are you attractive? Yes or no? Like, that's it.
See, been there, done that.
And
got the t-shirt.
Obviously, they could have been attractive back then. Like, you just missed it, or they could have had a glow up, or just general. I think you just miss people. But you've got common ground. You've got something to talk about. He's very big on that. Like, he thinks shared experiences are like the most important thing for a romantic relationship. He's very anti dating app as well.
Okay, so I'm kind of glad you said that, because I have said, because I've been single a long time. Very long time, 8 years. And in that time I've done a bit of dating apps, tried it, not really been for me. And it took me until sort of 2 years ago that I was like, I know for a fact the person I'm going to meet is not through an app. So it was like giving myself permission to like not need to be on it. Like, because I do think when you are someone that's busy working or you've got other things on, to have to facilitate an app or many apps at the same time.
Oh, it's such a time suck. Yeah.
It's like an energy leak in a way, because it could be time that instead of being sat at home scrolling, you could be out in the real world talking to people and finding those people in real life. What do you contribute to the dating app thing? Do you think there's good apps, bad apps? Should people be on them? Things like Raya. I've done Raya. Yeah, I've not tried that one. I just thought it was just money coming out every month. I did match with people who
I've heard it's very showy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I match with celebrities. Yeah, but the conversation is bland for the most part, because they've got a pick of the bunch. Do you know what I mean? And I've had some nice guys on there, like professional Michelin star chefs and people in Formula One, not Formula One drivers, tried that, did try Lando Norris but didn't get any, but like race engineers, people like that, great, but they're busy.
They are
so it's
busy.
like, how do we make this work?
They are not free
They're
people.
not free people. So you know, finding those people on those apps is another story. Like what would you say is like, are there any that people should avoid? Would you say, oh, I wouldn't waste my time on that app?
I mean, I don't love them. I have a lot of fun on them, so I enjoy them from a personal perspective, because when I go on them, I don't really treat them as if I'm finding my soulmate.
Right.
I am quite blunt on them. I'm very funny. I'm very witty.
Yeah.
And I just treat them like a game. I like almost try and come up with the funniest thing I can think of to get a response.
Right.
And that doesn't actually mean that I always want to chat to someone. Sometimes I'm just like, can I get this person to reply? Like, I generally treat them like that. And my whole profile is very jokey. It's not very serious. It's not like, I mean, I still look quite cute, but they're like, you know,
I love that.
I still look cute, but they're silly.
It's like a different part of your personality.
All the prompts are like very silly. And like the ones that are, you know, like, for example, like go like, this is my best side, and it's just a picture of my bum. Like,
I love that though, but I feel like there's a time and a place you can totally enjoy it and like experiment with the app and see what kind of works for you. Is there something that you have learnt from being on apps, like lesson wise, or what things to put on your profile? Because I feel like people can link their Instagram.
We could do a whole episode on that.
I mean,
like,
there's just so much
there's
to it.
So much.
Do you link your business life on there, or do you keep it just very personal?
I don't link my Instagram anymore. I used to, and since the podcast things, I don't, because again, I don't want people to be put off by like too much information.
Yeah.
So I think it's useful to keep that back. Because the apps used to have your full name on there. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that, yeah.
Whereas they don't now. It just says like Katie. So they're never going to be able to find my Instagram.
Yeah, because even if you didn't match with a person, they could still see your full name. And you'd get people in your DMs, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then people would just put the handles eventually, being like, want the followers. Like, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't have my Instagram linked, but I think that's a personal thing. But I think in terms of like what to put, my biggest thing is like varied photos.
Okay.
I have reviewed like loads of friends where they've just got a really nice picture of them with a drink, like normally an alcoholic drink, and that's the whole profile, like 6 pictures of just them with a drink, and I'm like, that's not doing anything.
That
like,
conveys one type of you, but it's not
exactly
like your hobbies or your
it's
other
like
interests.
one-faced. And also like I said to them, okay, if you were someone trying to match with you, what would you say? Like, what would you reply to? And they're like,
so true.
Oh, you're right, nothing. Like, there's no conversation starter here. Yeah, and if it's all just like, what do you like to do on Sunday brunches? Again, like, they're just gonna like that as a like maximum reaction. Yeah, they're gonna like a photo.
So true.
And then you can't actually start the thing. Whereas if you have something really stupid on there and like funny, it's way more likely gonna get people to actually like write something and engage, which is where I start to play the game, because I find it
definitely
fun. But yeah, in terms of apps to avoid, I did want to touch on that, because
I feel like it should
really
be a conversation.
It really does depend on like what you're looking for. So I think if you're looking for a long-term relationship, like probably Tinder isn't for you. I've heard really good things about The League recently. I've not downloaded it yet. It's meant to be for like professionals.
Okay.
So I guess your high value men theoretically should be on there.
Is that like a wait list like Raya?
Yeah, you have to be approved, but it's not paid, I don't think.
Is it through LinkedIn? Because I know Raya
it is. So you just have to wait for your approval. But the girl who told me about it said that you don't actually have to be, you know, like a lawyer, or, you know, it doesn't have to be one specific type of professional. It just needs to be basically a young professional. And your job could kind of be anything, as long as you have a LinkedIn that looks legit, I think. So it's not like hyper selective, but then I guess it has a level of, you know, if you've got a LinkedIn profile, you're probably looking in the businessy mindset. But yeah, and a really interesting one is Pure and Field. They're kind of like known as the really open-minded sexual apps.
Okay.
But I'm hearing loads about them actually being really good to find a long-term partner.
Right.
And that's one that I wouldn't have suggested before, but I've heard from people that there's like really like interesting good people on those, because actually a lot of people are saying that they want to be with those more open-minded like people. That's who they actually want to find as a lifelong partner. So that's really interesting to me, and it's not one that I've ever technically felt comfortable enough downloading, because I think I don't think I really have like massive kinks.
Yeah.
I'd probably consider myself fairly vanilla.
Thank you, Jack Harlow, for making that popular with his new song. I don't think it's out yet, but it's like, I'm vanilla, baby. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I don't have a foot fetish. I know it's really
No.
popular at the moment.
It is.
It's a resurgence of foot fetishes. I don't know where it's coming from. It's really not about
My
me.
feet are covered up today, guys. Damn.
But yeah, I just like I'm a sexual person, but I didn't think I was ever kinky enough to be on those apps.
Definitely.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
So how would you strike the balance between, because this is where it gets a bit tricky, because you can be on apps like that, but then you've got this kind of thing in the background of like, you could be working in a corporation that's very strict and serious. You might want to really showcase your personality and like who you are, but actually your personal brand needs to be very reserved. How do you navigate that and like show up and balance your public image but also showcase the real you? Because I feel like before we didn't really have this issue of like having to be two things, but we'd be industry professionals and we'd go home and just be ourselves. But I feel like now with dating apps and platforms where you'd meet and mingle with people, it's much harder to really convey the real you sometimes. So what should someone consider really for their profile? Like, do you think you should showcase, like, I feel like it's not like LinkedIn where it's like headshots and images of people at board meetings. It's just not like that.
No. And lots of people suggested that I put my main headshot on my dating profile, and I was like, why?
Yeah, it's like this isn't a job application.
Why would anyone like that? Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm all about like trying to get a reaction from someone, and I think that's how you play the apps. Because I say play because I do think they are a bit of a game. Like,
totally a game.
Then it's not like, I don't know why anyone would find it's a nice picture of me, but I can have a nice picture of me also doing something a bit more interesting, like an activity or a hobby. But I think the job thing is really interesting of what to put on your profile. Mine's pretty vague because, again, I want someone to ask me that in person.
That's true. You don't want to give them everything.
Exactly. Like, and if I did, I may as well just put my LinkedIn like link on there. Do you know what I mean?
Like, check it out, guys. Have a little look.
Yeah, because mine just says podcast host. And then loads of my questions that I get are, what's the podcast? And that's an easy way for people to like.
There you go. You've given someone the prompt. And we were just talking about like teeing up something.
Yeah.
So like lining something up. And my next question was going to be around that, because I've done a lot of things in my past where I have seen a guy I thought was attractive. Usually in person, I'm sort of the most forward, but I will give my business card, and usually that's what I do. If it's something where I've done it at like an airport, I've done it on an airplane.
Airport was on my list.
Airport is my favourite, one of my favourite places to meet people. Like, go and fly to a random country, guys, and the amount
just wander around Heathrow.
The amount of interactions I've had, like amazing conversations, not even like in a flirtatious way, but just like beautiful like meet cutes that you're like, wow, this is literally like Love Actually.
Yeah.
In those sorts of situations, is it a good thing to initiate the moment? Because I've literally gone up to guys and been like, I think you're really attractive, can I give you my card? Is that the right line? Am I too forward? Like, I've always seen it as like, again, a bit like a game.
Yeah.
Like, it's exercising that flex and that confidence muscle. Do you think that women should be doing that, or kind of what would you think is like the way to go about things?
So
basically?
That is the whole theme of the book, Make Your Move.
Love it.
And it's because, so it's a lot of, obviously, in the modern world is now post like the Me Too movement. And it kind of comes back to that intimidation thing that we were talking about earlier. Men, and I think rightly so, have more fear instilled in them when it comes to how to approach women. They don't want to come across, the right men that have learnt from these like Me Too movements, they don't want to become across as creepy or inappropriate. So if you're giving standoffish vibes, a decent man is going to think, I should not go near her. I should not approach her. I should not ask her for a number, ask her out, because she's clearly not interested. And that's a good lesson. Like, you know, that's what we hope that most
I feel
men
like there's
would
a line in
read.
the sand now. Yeah.
Whereas, so this is what the book's all about because of that, and all these decent men now kind of having this fear of not wanting to come across as too forward, too creepy. It's actually, the onus is on the woman now to make her move. So you're doing the exact right thing according to the book. Of,
Okay,
you
that's
know,
good to know.
I think it makes sense. Like, people like people that are interested in them. Like, I will like you if you like me, and people are the same.
It's
right?
a natural formulation of a relationship, because it kind of opens that person up, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think if you're, you know, being really clear with your intentions, not only does it get you to the result quicker, so if someone's not interested, you know, and you can move on, and, you know, you haven't lost any time waiting, wondering. But I think it's really outdated now for a woman just to sit there and wait for the guy to do the asking. Like, I don't think that's going to get you very far. So I do think you're doing the right thing of, like, going out and approaching people. And I think the book explains this in way more detail if people are really interested. You don't need to be, like, super forward, being like, I want your number, let's go for dinner. It can literally just be, like, starting off almost as a friendship, just smiling, being warm, asking them questions, just showing that you're interested in them as a person. And then it can lead, you know, onto something. I think so much of, like, dating nowadays, and the apps have encouraged this, is like, you have to know straight away if they want to date you.
Definitely.
And actually, like, no, you can just, like, chill out, have some patience, and just see like, if you guys vibe.
Because I found and I find it quite interesting, because I'm still single, so it's not been successful, but there has been success in it's teeing up the counterpart, the male, to make the move, because I give my details, and having the business card, it's like all there, it's like quick. It doesn't have to be this awkward, like, can I give you my number or write it down? It's like it's already there. It's a physical, like, validation of who I am. Like, these are my credentials, basically. You know, if you want to text me, you can text me. If you don't, no skin off my back. Like, it's the perfect balance of give and take. But, you know, if they don't text me, I'm not crying over it. It's just like, oh, okay, well, they're not interested, or they might not be available in that way. And you just have to kind of wing it. Sometimes, like, it's been in, like, a complete passing situation, like, really quick, and you have to make that quick decision. Like, do I give them my number? Like, would it work? Maybe. Like, sometimes you just have to kind of go for it.
And I like the way you've done it. It's not too forceful. It's like, here you go, you have my details, you know that I've clearly said, like, please contact me. Like, you've given them the open, being like, here you go, like, I'm giving you access to my life almost. So it's up to you whether you go for it. But yeah, I think when I read the book, I was like, I have a lot to learn from this. I'm nowhere near forward enough. I, you know, can be a bit reserved and think, oh, you know, like, if they really like me, they will, like, text me or whatever, try and meet up with me. And obviously, like, that is true, but I still think with men, a lot of the times now, you really do have to lead the horse to water. Like, I would really like you to ask me out.
Please drink. Sit and drink.
So I think, and it's great. And I do think that men are learning, in the sense of, I've definitely had male friends that have suggested that maybe they'd want to take me out, and I've just been like, oh, you're funny, like, no. And then they've actually, like, taken no as no. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's really subtle ways of all doing it. You know, like, I do think men are learning no is no. So that's a really good point, actually. If someone's already asked you and you've said no, you can't expect them to re-ask. Like, you're gonna have to step up now.
Exactly. And it comes back to that idea of, like, people from your past. People might not know that you are interested or be open to that conversation. That's the thing with going to things like alumni events, because I feel like it's harder for that person to necessarily know that you're open and willing and
100%.
interested. What can a woman do, aside from maybe giving a business card or something like that? What could they do to initiate that first move and kind of then lead it to and allow them to make the second move, or
I think
solidify
so. Let's build a scenario of, you're at your friends' work drinks. We like that one.
We like that analogy.
And you've seen someone and you're like, okay, I'm getting good vibes from them. Literally, you go up, you say hello. You might have already done this, and you have a conversation. You're warm, you're friendly, you're, open, asking questions. And then this is so key, leave for a bit. Like, don't stay with them forever. Look like, you want to talk to other people. Otherwise, I think people get a little bit put off by like, they're literally beelining for me.
Right.
And, that's, I think most people wouldn't like that, right?
Yeah.
You want to like have a little bit of it's
A
almost
slight
like
chase.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, I miss them. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not here the whole time.
Even though they're in the same
I
room.
did this recently and it really, really worked well. Because also he actually initiated the like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to my other colleague, and I was like, cool, I'll go talk to whoever, and left it like a decent like half an hour, 45 minutes, and then naturally the circles kind of came back around, and I was like, oh, hi, you again.
Yeah.
And it worked really well because I could see that there was a girl at this drinks who was being really, to be honest, like off-putting.
Okay.
She was just like in everyone's faces. Like, I reckon she was probably doing this technique. Like, she was there looking for someone, but it was so obvious that she wasn't just there to like network and make friends and, like seem like she's not. And at one point, the guy even said to me, like, oh, gosh, that girl is, like, always in my, like, space.
Oh, I see.
And I was like, interesting.
But it's interesting that they can pick up on, like, I feel like anyone can when it's the other way around. And you think, like, you've asked your friends, help. Like, help me.
Yeah, because
it's too much.
It's
like,
too much. You have to remember, this is also a stranger that you've just met. Like, they don't want to probably spend the whole 3 hours of this drinks, like, just talking to you.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, yeah.
Unless it's, like, the love at first sight and you both got that energy and you're like, oh, my gosh.
No, I don't think that's... I just don't think that's legit. I think that is, like... That's coming from a place of anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, if you have that strong butterflies, it's just anxiety. It's not like, oh, it's just lust.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think with like something that's like sustainable and long term, you'd have that. I think that's just two people that are just overexcited and anxious.
Just a bit like, whoa, that person's attractive, and it's like the excitement of it.
Or they have like an anxious attachment style where they literally like can't let go.
Yeah, well, that's very common as well. So I feel like when you're navigating all those different parts of dating and getting yourself out there, there's lots of different like ways that people can find people and meet people. What would you say to someone that wants to kind of create some time in their schedule to do it? Like, when's a good time? Because you say all these things, but it's like, where and how can someone carve that out of their day? Should it be like a once a week thing, or how can someone like integrate it basically?
I do think putting a boundary on it would be quite a good idea. You could even set aside an evening being like, okay, Thursday's always my date evening. So you're only doing it once. It's not too time consuming. Or maybe even it's maybe not even a date evening. Maybe it's like Thursday, I'm going to try and go out and meet new people. I'm going to try and find drinks that I can go to. I'm going to try and find an event I can go to. Like, I just signed up to a Christmas party that I found on LinkedIn.
That's amazing.
Actually, you should come. It's like a creatives.
Sign me up.
Just for creatives.
That's so cool, because that's another thing. As someone who's self-employed,
and
where's the Christmas party that everyone has?
That's why they set it up. So it's like for the creatives of London to like have their own Christmas party.
I always thought about this. I thought nobody has done that, but obviously they have, which is a good thing.
Yeah, they're hard to find because it was just really a LinkedIn post. So I only found it because like someone from my network like liked or commented it. For example, I wasn't actually connected.
And that's London based. That's
really
cool.
Yeah, it's in central London.
That's really cool.
On the Thursday, I think. But yeah, I commented, I was brave, and I was like, I'm a creator.
Yeah,
like,
get me in the
like,
door.
we could meet our husbands there. You just don't know.
You literally could. And I also say this about things when you're trying new things, like hobbies. I've said this before with my podcast about building identity capital. So this idea that you like develop a bit of like a portfolio of hobbies.
Yeah.
So you have those interests, but like you might accidentally meet your person at like pottery painting class. Like you just never know. How can someone like deal with that and like get themselves out there? Like, are there different strategies for finding people and like hobbies? Would you say treat it differently, or
not really? I'd honestly just do what like you're aligned with, and I think it's such a good space to meet people. If you really like park running, absolutely go on your park runs every
park
Sunday.
runs, actually, that's a good thing. Because me sort of running a whole different community of people that I would have never have met or been introduced to, and it does open up more doors. And I think when we're in this sort of world of working from home and just being in our own bubbles 24/7, I mean, the only place that I would go outside of home some days is just the gym. But like, that is the same circle of people that often you don't really want to mingle with. I mean, been there, done that.
The gym's an interesting one. Like, it was on my list because I do think, especially if you're going to somewhere like Third Space, do you know what I mean? That is where you're going to find some high value people.
Mine was not a Third Space,
no,
which is probably why the person that I dated had to move gyms because I wasn't moving. In all honesty,
but I do think in general, like, it could be a really good space.
Yeah.
It just is a bit awkward, like you said. It is a little bit like working with someone that either is going to work really well or not at all.
Yeah.
Because
and if
then you're going to be
then
clashing
what do you
in the
do?
same space.
Yeah, it's no longer a safe space for you to de-stress. It's like, am I going to see this person at the gym? You know, when you used to hope to see them, and now you're like, I really hope they're not in there.
Yeah, and you're like trying to like align your schedule so it's not aligned with theirs.
It's like, I'm pretty sure they'd be in the office today. Okay, I'm going to go in my lunch break.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go at 4 when I know they definitely can't be there.
Or they're definitely commuting.
Yeah.
So tell me more, and just to kind of bring the audience or my listeners back to you and what you do in the podcast. You've got podcast live shows. Tell me a bit more about that and like what you're working on for the end of this year and the new year.
Yeah, I don't have any coming up for Christmas. I just did one in October, so that took a lot of my energy because it was at Inferno, so it's like a big high energy bingo singles event, which was fun.
Very cool.
Very fun. But I am going to do one in February. That's what I've set. It's the date is not set, but it will be like the Valentine's week. So we're ready. It's my 2-year anniversary of the podcast.
My gosh.
So that's very
When?
exciting.
In February?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
We started our podcast around the same time. Yeah, which is really cool.
That's nice.
Aww.
Little like sync.
Yeah, I love that. And live events, I feel like it enables you to network with those people, but also bring those singles out into the dating world.
This is the thing.
It's
this
like
is
a
why I
real
really
time work
wanted to do it. Like, I have a lot of people that listen to the podcast and it's not in their interest or maybe their personality to come on and be a guest. They're too nervous. But then it means that they can come to the singles events, not be like the main focus, but meet, you know, people that maybe are more extroverted so they can, you know, like-minded, or more that's actually more like a yin and yang kind of thing of, you know, meeting maybe the more extroverted people that would come on the podcast versus the introverted that wouldn't. But that can work really well in a romantic relationship.
Definitely, kind of that balance. And have you had any success stories from those events? Like any dates or things that mingling?
It's really interesting because my first one back in June, there was actually like a few kisses shared in the room, like where
that is exciting.
Was. I know, and I just was not. I don't know. Like, obviously, I just wasn't expecting like it to happen in the room.
Yeah.
Like, I thought maybe, you know, people would exchange and then go on dates, and like it was quite lively. And I think like I did the actual show with like the comedians. I had like a stand-up comedian, and then I had 2 comers guests, and we did like a lot of live polling with the audience, and also did like a fun kind of take me out style live thing with the audience where they stood up. Someone was on stage behind a screen and we were doing questions, and if they didn't like the sound of them, they'd sit down.
That's
and then
so cool.
Whoever was left standing at the end, they could like come out and kind of like see who was interested, and then after the networking thing go up to them and say like, oh hi, I saw you stood for me. That was the idea of it.
I love that.
To like try and help people identify single people and people that were interested in them specifically. So yeah, it was really high energy, really fun. Like I had to shush the audience like so many times because it was quite a small room, and there was 150 people in the room. So it was big. But also, I think
lots of opportunity for people just to relax and just sit in it a little bit, sit in the energy.
Exactly. And I think because there were so many people didn't feel like they were on a spot. Like I had too many people sign up for that blind dating thing.
Oh, wow.
I thought I had one guy that volunteered to do a demo, and I said like, okay, at the end we'll see if anyone else wants to do it. No pressure. I had literally 10 people sign up. I was like, I don't have time to do you all. I only had time to do 3.
Oh my goodness.
So everyone was just really up for it and happy to put themselves on stage, but also just, you know, stand up, sit down, get involved. So yeah, I think that's why the kisses happened.
No, that's really cool.
But yeah,
The Valentine's one, what can we expect? What can we hope for?
yeah, well, hopefully a lot more single people in the room.
So if you're watching or listening to this,
yeah, or if you want to come on the podcast, like I'm always
yes.
looking for guests. You just have to slide into the DMs. And it is, honestly, I'm not just saying this, it's really fun.
I actually feel like really glad that I did it, because I feel like it opened my eyes to myself as well.
Yeah,
it's a bit like,
you learn a lot.
I've got to answer these questions, like they're actually really valid dating questions. It was a bit like journaling and sitting down
a little bit, being like,
kind of
what
it.
do I actually want? Like, what am I looking for? Who am I attracted to? They are like good things to sit and think about. I've had lots of other people say that, being like, I've actually never like thought about it properly. So yeah, in terms of what the show's going to be like in February, I just know it's going to be very funny. I've got 2 comedians already lined up.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was off the back of the other one. They reached out being like, the other comedians had so much fun, can we come on next? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. So that's
I
really
love that
fun.
like comedic element, because I feel like, again, it breaks the ice, it makes it easier, you've got something to talk about, and
I just
have
think
that
with,
conversation.
yeah, dating, like if you can't laugh about your own stories, like who can?
Exactly.
And it's like shared trauma sometimes.
It is.
But it's nice. And that's the one big thing I've really got from my podcast, is a sense of like community of we're all in this together. And I didn't, when I started the podcast, I wasn't single, because it was based on my partnership. But now I am, and I'm so grateful. But it was, the reason that I set it up was because before that I was single for so many years, and it does get quite isolating. And I've even had people that have come to the events and said they found like friends from it, just because they're like, oh no, I know someone who's single who might want to go to like, I don't know, singles night with me.
Yeah, and be open to it.
Yeah.
And like want to help it, like wing women each other or
and
whatever.
Exactly. Or maybe they just have slow Sundays, because most people are like, you know, cozied up with their partner having a roast. And single people can feel a bit like, oh, don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
Don't have anyone to go to Winter Wonderland with. Do you know what I mean? Like,
we should do a meetup. We should just all go to Winter Wonderland.
Yeah. I literally did that recently.
That would be a good place for a date.
Yeah, I wanted to do
date.
my first Thursday, you know, the dating app, like singles event. A lot for market research, but I did just want to see what it was about.
Yeah.
And I invited like 14 single girls, and we all went together as like
that
a massive
so cool.
group.
That
and
is so cool.
Most of them were from the podcast.
Yeah.
And like a few of my union school friends came that are still single, and they were like, how do you know all these single people? And I was like, well, it's kind of my job.
She's got a network now. So
like,
again, I mean, if any
90
guys
episodes,
are listening,
like,
or anyone that wants to date, I mean, I feel like you're like a matchmaker. You've got people on speed dial that you're like, literally, maybe that could be the person.
I did just sign up to this dinner, actually. That's another thing.
Ooh.
I can't remember exactly what the company was called. It felt like quite high value. So I was like, you know what? I've not put myself in a situation like that. It was like a 3-course dinner in Chelsea.
Wow.
And you had to apply to like be invited to the dinner. It wasn't like you can just buy a ticket. You had to like submit kind of like a bio about yourself. And I was like, ooh, it's kind of like giving, I don't know, like
giving Gossip Girl.
Yeah, it's giving matchmaker, but not paying thousands of pounds. Because if you want a real matchmaker, they are so expensive.
Yes, they
I
are.
don't know if people are aware, but they
I've
are
had
thousands
like
of
agencies
pounds.
reach out about being on their books.
Oh yeah.
But often I feel like it's just they're looking for, I'm not calling myself pretty, but like they're looking for like a type of aesthetic versus actual like matchmaking personalities. And it's like people just throwing money at the problem.
Yeah, it's because they need to set people up with their clients that they think they'll like.
But actually I don't think that's very like productive in comparison to other matchmaking services.
I'm not on any list. It's something, again, I like want to try all these avenues.
I was a few years ago, but like the people that I was being approached with, I had absolutely nothing in common, and like it just did not align.
I guess
and
it is
kind
quite
of thought
one-sided because they're looking for their client, not for you.
Exactly. So it kind of felt like, am I just like a bit of meat?
Yeah.
A bit of like a bit of filler.
That you felt like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it was like I had no say in and it was like, this person's amazing, you 100% should date them, and it's like, well, I don't know
Oh,
who
that's
they
like
are.
that.
You know, their LinkedIn profile says this, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's all these different things, all these different
There's so many
elements to
options.
consider.
Yeah, and this is why people get so overwhelmed, and there's
Yes.
so many different things you can do, which I don't know. I think is a good thing, and I think you just never know what you're going to find at any of these events.
Definitely. But it's been so lovely to have you on the podcast today.
welcome.
Thank
I've
you for
really
coming on. I
enjoyed
feel
it.
like we could have gone into... We
could've-
opened
it could've
different
been
Pandora's
hours.
boxes, didn't we?
Yeah, we
And,
did a little bit.
oh, I just feel like dating is such a broad thing, and finding that person, if you're somebody who is watching today and is single, or you're in a relationship and are even thinking, I don't think this is working for me, you know, don't settle. Like, we're not in an age to be settling.
No.
When-
That is like my number one message.
Oh,
Like, don't give up hope.
and it's never too late.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favourite podcasters, she's just turned 40, Ashley Hesseltine. She's just found her man. Oh, actually, can I
Amazing.
give one more thing?
Oh, give one more thing.
That just reminded me. One big advice for like women who want to go for that like high educated man, don't want to settle on that, like don't want to change their type, because that is one of the advice, is like maybe change that standard if it's not like so set on you. But obviously for some people they want someone with a degree, for example. A really good advice is to date down in age, because the competitive element just isn't quite the same. Because they're younger, they're like, oh well, she's older than me, obviously she's going to earn more, obviously she's going to be further in her career.
Yes.
It takes away that
pressure. That is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And actually it also removes the competition slightly, because the women that age might not be looking for something long term
Yeah.
as well. So it's like all those different characteristics.
Yeah, there
is fascinating.
there was a lot of studies that say that the men,
And that's in the book as well.
it is in the book as well.
I'm going to link this book, guys,
There's
in
two,
the
but yeah.
description and the show notes, so you can purchase, read at your leisure. I'm going to read
I think
it.
like Datanomics is quite old now. It's 2015, but to be honest,
Wow.
it's all still relevant, because the projection for 2030 is crazy. It's like for every one man that graduates, there's going to be 3 women. So the problem's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Okay.
So I do think Make Your Move came out in 2021.
Yeah.
And I do think you can just jump straight to that one.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really interested in the whole like graduating uni college thing, it's super interesting. But the Make Your Move gives you the solutions, and gives you all these things of like, okay, what
Which
can
is
I
what we
consider? What maybe like, can I be flexible on the degree thing? Can I not? Like, just helps you get your priorities in order, I think.
I think having deal breakers, but having things that like you'd really prefer if they had, is a good thing to differentiate, rather than like absolutely not, like if they're not degree educated. But there's so many different things. Like, I've dated guys that I've had things in my deal breaker category, and I've still dated them. So it's like sometimes things just flow in their own way.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't worked out, but you know, you live and you learn. It's sometimes you have to be open-minded to it as well. So
Yeah.
I feel like this has been a really interesting podcast episode.
Good.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm also going to make sure I link all the Single Sounds info below, events and the podcast, so you can check it out. I'm also going to be a bit naughty and link my podcast.
Yeah, link yours. Oh,
because
everyone
it was
should
really
listen to it.
fun.
And if you want to date Alice, you know where to go. You can just
Thank
you
you.
can just write in.
You can just write in directly. Speed dial. Thank you so much,
that
guys.
5% of male listeners. We're talking directly to you.
We are talking to you.
I guess that's the only reason why you listen.
That's so true. Well, I hope.
Because they fancy you. Yeah. Why else?
Why else? No, stop.
It's, like,
Stop
it's very
egging
like
me on.